I believe Asajj Ventress is going to become the new Ahsoka of Star Wars animation if Lucasfilm and Disney play their cards right. Since bringing Ventress back from the dead for The Bad Batch Season 3 and the recent announcement of her involvement in Tales of the Underworld, Lucasfilm is clearly taking the time to invest in Ventress as a character, further developing her story, and I think this is only the beginning. What makes Ventress different from Ahsoka and stand out amongst the majority of all Star Wars characters is that Ventress was redeemed and is allowed to survive, forming a new path for herself. Ventress already has a compelling, tragic, yet relatable story, and we were basically introduced to her at her lowest or darkest point, so we can only really go up from there. Over the first 5 seasons of the Clone Wars, we see the effect years of abandonment have taken on Ventress, watching her endlessly search for a place to belong. We see her given away to slavers as a child, train with the Jedi and Sith. We see her return to the Night Sisters, and most recently, her involvement with bounty hunters in the Underworld. We've seen how her years of abandonment trauma have slowly turned her into a cynic and a loner, but then the Dark Disciple novel changes everything, showing Ventress slowly break out of that cycle, allowing herself to trust again, and even fall in love, eventually sacrificing her life for another person. Most recently, we've seen Ventress as a guide and mentor, protecting a child from suffering a similar fate to her own, which now leads us to her arc in Tales of the Underworld. Based on the trailer and the series announcement on StarWars.com, we know that Ventress is on the run along with a new ally. Her new ally is described as a young Padawan grappling with life after Order 66. The trailer shows us scenes of the pair cutting down stormtroopers, being chased by a speeder gang, and even facing off against an Inquisitor, or at least Ventress facing off against an Inquisitor to protect the Padawan. Clearly, the two of them will form a bond over the series, and this is still a relatively new thing for Ventress. Season 4 of the Clone Wars saw her go against her bounty mission to save a young girl from being torn away from her family, and Season 5 saw Ventress helping Ahsoka after she was abandoned by the Jedi Order. Both fates Ventress suffered herself many times in her past, and fates she continuously tried to keep others from having to experience. We saw echoes of this also in the Dark Disciple novel, and most recently with Omega, and this is such an endearing and admirable development for her character. We see how the dynamic between her and Omega played out in the Bad Batch. Regardless of their personality clashes, Ventress cares and had Omega's best intentions at heart. And it's an aspect of her character I want to see future stories put more focus on, and I definitely think we're going to see more of it in Tales of the Underworld. Aside from the Padawan, it seems Ventress is also after a young girl in the trailer, possibly for a bounty, or maybe it's a similar situation to Omega, where Ventress is utilizing the bounty to track down and protect potential Force sensitives wanted by the Empire. The young girl featured on the poster is the same character we see shooting at Ventress from inside the desert shack, and the older man, who I assume is her father, seems to know who Ventress is, further complicating exactly what Ventress is after. Though it could be very interesting if he were also an Order 66 survivor who knew Ventress from the Clone Wars. This could explain his daughter's initial hostility towards Ventress. The sequences with Ventress in the trailer also seem to take place on an industrial planet that looks very similar to Daiyu, introduced in the Kenobi series, and a desert planet that looks very similar to Kobo, introduced in the game Jedi Survivor, the sequel to Jedi Fallen Order. The entire concept of this Jedi Padawan lying low after Order 66, only revealing himself after an Inquisitor shows up, is very similar to the story of Jedi Fallen Order, and knowing that the Tales of the Underworld writer, Matt Michnovitz, also wrote the story for Fallen Order, I'm definitely expecting to see some parallels, including an eventual tie-in to the Hidden Path. The connections are all there. Bringing the focus back to Ventress and her story, let's also get into what we didn't see in the trailer, but something I think we could see in the series. The beginning episode of Ventress's arc in Tales of the Underworld has the potential to explain how and why Ventress was brought back to life after her death in the Dark Disciple novel, maybe even showing us a glimpse at different events from the novel to explain how she even died to begin with for fans who never read the book. If we look closely at the top right of the Tales of the Underworld poster, we can clearly see two silhouettes surrounded by green Night Sister magic flames, suggesting Night Sister magic will play a part in the series. And because Ventress has never wielded magic herself, I imagine that these figures are either the spirits of dead Night Sisters guiding Ventress through some form of Night Sister purgatory back to the land of the living, or that these figures are actually of Ventress herself, going through some type of rebirth. Jennifer Corbett confirmed that we will find out how Ventress was brought back to life in future stories, and Tales of the Underworld might end up being that future story we've been waiting for. The idea of Ventress navigating a Night Sister purgatory and the images on the Tales poster remind me a lot of the Journey to Ahsoka cards Dave Filoni drew and released back in 2016. In the video I made theorizing about how I believe Ventress was brought back to life, which you can check out in the cards, I discussed how Ventress has always been the foil to Ahsoka, and compared Ahsoka's trials via the World Between Worlds and rebirth in water as Ahsoka the White in Season 1 of the Ahsoka series, to Ventress's journey through Dark Disciple, her sacrifice, redemption, and possibly an eventual rebirth through the Water of Life, which would only further my idea that Ventress is going to be the new Ahsoka of Star Wars animation. The parallels are all there. Now we just need an animated series for Ventress to lead. When the trailer dropped, I was nervous that Ventress's big return was only for Tales of the Underworld, but if that was the case, why would Lucasfilm intertwine her story with the Bad Batch and the larger Star Wars animation sphere? Comparing her return to Barriss Offee, for example, Barriss's return came and went. Her inclusion in Tales of the Empire was a surprise to be sure, a welcome one, yet her arc within the series was very self-contained. Barriss's arc began and ended very isolated from the larger Star Wars universe, but Ventress is another case. The fact that Lucasfilm and Disney dropped the Tales of the Underworld trailer prior to Star Wars Celebration Japan means that they definitely have more to show. Most likely a brand new multi-season Star Wars animated series following in the footsteps of the Clone Wars, Rebels, and the Bad Batch. Whether or not this series will also include Ventress, I'm not sure. It could definitely be a little less likely now that she's confirmed for Tales, but at the same time, Tales of the Underworld could serve as a true reintroduction to who Asajj Ventress is now, preparing the general Star Wars fandom for what to expect from Ventress going forward. Between Omega, the new Jedi Padawan, and the girl from the Tales trailer, it seems like Ventress is being set up for more, and all signs are pointing to the hidden path, showing Ventress protecting these young Force sensitives from the Empire and Inquisitorius throughout the galaxy. There's just no way they're not building to an eventual hidden path connection, especially taking into consideration the eventual reunion of Ventress and Quinlan Vos. I've talked about it so many times, but this is the series I believe Lucasfilm Animation has been building towards, and the series I believe Asajj Ventress will lead, thus becoming the new Ahsoka for Star Wars animation. The creators behind these Star Wars animated shows have been teasing Ventress's return as a new chance at life, and this idea has the makings of an amazing, deep, and compelling Star Wars animated series. If The Bad Batch Season 3 was a sample and Tales of the Underworld is an appetizer, the Star Wars fandom is ready for the Ventress main course. Do you think we're going to get more Asajj Ventress stories after Tales of the Underworld? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to follow me on social media at ScottyHolidaySW, and as always, may the Force be with you.